welcome to another episode of Not Your Mama's Midlife, where we believe that midlife is not a crisis, it's actually an awakening. Hi, I'm Tasha Davis. I'm a nurse practitioner and the owner of Downtown Hydration and Wellness in Aiken, South Carolina. But for today and for future episodes, I will be your host and your tour guide through the wonderful journey of perimenopause/menopause. So let's just hop right in. Last week, kind of talked about those the crisis part, right, of midlife, and there's so much emphasis on the symptoms that women experience. And those symptoms are a very real part of our hormonal journey through midlife. I know I personally have experienced many of the same symptoms that patients come into my office reporting, the hot flashes, the night sweats, the waking up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And again, it's not that those things aren't part of midlife. For so many of us women, my way of dealing with things is to kind of always look towards the positive and kind of flip it a little bit. And that's what I want to do through this podcast. I want to flip the perspective and talk about some of the other things that happens during our journey through midlife. It's definitely something that I wasn't raised hearing about. And from, my perspective as being a medical provider and seeing so many of you in the office, it wasn't something that you experienced, in conversations, within your homes as well. So it's kind of catching us all off guard, right? We're all like, why do we want to burn the house down at this point? Why are we want to set, relationships and careers on fire after so many years, and it hasn't been a problem? Well, let's talk about that. So it could be for several reasons that we're experiencing these things. Number one, yes, we are having these hormone changes, right? The estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, all of these changes are biologically happening within us. And especially if you are someone who's always been more prone to depression, mood disorders, anxiety, these fluctuations can just exacerbate those things. Okay. So if you're someone like me personally, I've struggled with anxiety throughout my life, sometimes more than others. And it could all be related to, different situations that I was in, but there was always this undercurrent that I tended to lean more towards being in an anxious state, right? So when my perimenopause started really perimenopausing for me, the anxiety was actually, even worse. Okay. The moods, the mood swings, the mood changes, those were actually, more extreme for me is what I experienced. And so what would happen for me is I would wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it could be for no reason at all. But as soon as I woke up, the anxiety was there. Okay. It was just there. It was hard. And my heart would be racing. I was actually having like the physical manifestations of that with palpitations, just ruminating thoughts, just worst case scenario, guys, worst case scenario. There didn't have to be anything majorly stressful going on in my life, because Tasha was going to invent it. Okay. We were taking leaps and bounds to worst case scenario over, over anything and over nothing and over everything all at the same time. And the feedback that I get from my patients says I'm not alone in that. And so if that's something that you are experiencing, I want you to know now you're not alone in that either. Even things like driving, right? So just literally driving would cause my anxiety to just be through the roof. I told a patient the other day, it was funny, but it's true. Those are usually the funniest things, the truest things. But I told a patient the other day, we were talking about just the new onset of anxiety that so many women face over simple things like driving, right? And I said, I perimenopause so bad with that. I actually moved downtown so I could just walk to work. So I was just eliminating all possibilities of driving, especially now that my children are older and they have cars and they're driving themselves. So I just kind of fed into that a little bit. Um, don't take it to the extreme. Again, my ADHD, we're going to just leap right on over to the most extreme thing sometimes. It's always not a positive, but that's me. So again, this is a podcast that I really want to pour my heart into, just normalizing the transition for so many women. And so, if you're not one that experiences anxiety, maybe you tend to lean more towards depression or sadness. And you're finding yourself throughout perimenopause, and you've noticed that maybe you were well managed. Maybe the depression was well managed either with medications or through effective coping skills and lifestyle changes. And now you're finding that it's more difficult to actually kind of not tend to go to that sadness, right? To that not be your fallback again. Those are real changes that we go through. And there are, again, some reasons. The hormonal shifts, yes. But there's also a shift within us that starts peeking its head up during this time. Especially for a lot of us, we are transitioning our roles as moms, right, through this time of perimenopause. I shared last week, I had a very difficult time with my oldest son when he was graduating high school and going off to college, because the fear of the unknown. None of us like change. It's scary. And then you add in the perimenopause to that, and it was just a perfect storm of just feeling like my world was collapsing around me, right? Even though these were happy things, these were exciting things. It was hard for me to be happy and excited because I was just so anxious about it. And so, with the anxiety and once you kind of learn that about yourself and you're able to navigate through that, then that's when you can get to a point of where you appreciate things, right? I can appreciate the role that I'm in right now as a mom to my oldest son, because I kind of came through it, and it fosters an excitement for now. I'm about to go through it with my youngest son. He's a senior this year. And so we're getting ready to transition into, my role with him as well. And I'm not scared of that now. I'm excited about it and I'm looking forward to it. But during this time and transition, it really causes us to look within a little more. So as you are needed less in that mom role, you may find yourself like, okay, well, now what do I do? Right? I'm so used to feeling needed. And then we are kind of left with ourselves. We're kind of left going, well, okay, so that's, that part is over or it's changing, but I'm still here and I'm looking around and, I don't really know where I fit now. And so a lot of us women, you kind of have that just thought process and this like, what do I do? Because we have just identified ourselves so much in the roles that we filled and less about who we are as a person. And so once we get to this point of perimenopause, everything's changing. Our bodies are changing. Okay. Like our body shapes are changing. If you were working out and exercising and eating, the right things, you may find that those things aren't like really working now, right? You're having to work harder. You're having to change up your nutrition even more or your workout system even more, because our physical bodies are changing. And, when you are looking at yourself physically and you are seeing changes, and then at the same time, internally, you are feeling changes within you, that can be pretty scary. It can be, what the heck is going on? You can, I know for me, there's, a lot of times I always, what's wrong with me? Right? What's wrong with me? We always are very quick to think that something's wrong with us, instead of just kind of taking a minute to process the information, kind of take ourselves out of it just a bit, and maybe talk to ourselves like we would talk to a friend. you know I'm very blessed with a group of friends that are able to pull that out of me. Okay. They're able to say, "What's wrong with you? You're amazing." And so, sometimes we need that, because especially during this time, there's a lot going on, right? There is a lot going on. And, when you look online and you try to research, and it's not always great information. And some of the things that we feel we don't want to say out loud, right? We don't want to say out loud because we think that we sound crazy, because guess what? No one's saying it out loud. But I can promise you, so many of us are thinking it, we're feeling it. And I am a firm believer in that when one woman speaks, she gives permission to others to do the same thing. And so I hope that that's what you get from this podcast, is just the permission to say the dang thing, right? It's valid. You're valid. When you're tired, be tired and rest. And your body is talking to you throughout this whole transition of perimenopause and menopause. It's really a time that our body is speaking so loudly to us. We just have to listen, and we have to learn to just honor what it is that our body is craving. So if we are, of course, as women, hey, I'm guilty of it 1,000%, we push through. We're going to push through. It doesn't matter what it is, push through, push through, push through. You may find yourself during this time that it's hard to push through things that you could normally push through and keep going. Like, your body is just like worn out. Listen to your body, please. Your body is screaming for rest. Okay. It doesn't make you less than, it doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And so your body is always talking to you about what it needs. And we just have to sit still a minute and just honor that and listen, and then do what our bodies need in order to keep going, because we are going through so much and so many changes, internally and externally. So I would invite you, if you are someone who has found yourself more anxious during this time, if you have found yourself leaning more towards mood instability, just low mood, low motivation, just sit with yourself and try to figure out what's going on, what's happening. For me personally, it became very apparent once my children have kind of gotten older and going through perimenopause. I found my purpose in the doing, right? The doing for others. I'm a medical provider, so I want to do for others. I want to serve others. I do have that heart for serving others, for my family in different ways, and for my community and for my patients. But at some point, I have to also serve myself. Okay. So if I'm not serving and taking care of me, it really is true. You can't pour from an empty cup. And it has never, 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 never been more glaringly obvious for me until perimenopause. And once I started honoring myself, and once I started serving myself, then I got it, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so then I got it. I was like, oh man, I really can show up more for my children, or show up more for my spouse, or show up more at work, because I feel rested. I feel calm. I feel joy. But in order to get to that point, you have to sit still a minute and figure out what serves you. And more importantly, what doesn't. Because sometimes that self-care isn't doing more, right? Sometimes that self-care is doing less. And that's not a very popular thing for us, especially women. We don't know less, right? We just know more. It's all or nothing. Where are my ADHDers? Where are my eldest daughters? Okay. We just have one mode and it is like full throttle. And so during perimenopause, especially for me, you get to a point where it's like you start feeling this undercurrent of things just no longer serving you. And it's hard because you again, I know with me personally, you think something's wrong with you, right? That's always a default for so many of us. We'll talk about childhood trauma in another episode, but a lot of it can stem from childhood trauma of just, we found value in what we did within our family system. Okay. We only had value for what we could do and in the deeds that we did for other people, and not in just who we are as a person and as a human and as a daughter and a sister. And now during this perimenopausal journey, for so many of us, when we're sitting still, we find that there are some things that just don't serve us, and they never did, or maybe they did for a season and they just don't do it anymore. And it could be things like the role that you play within your family system, right? Maybe you're the person who plans all of the family functions or host all of the family holiday dinners. And maybe you loved it. Maybe you never did like it. You just kind of took on that role, or maybe you loved it at a certain point in your life, but now you've transitioned and you don't enjoy it anymore. It's more stressful, right? And you kind of don't know what to do with that because you don't want to say the thing, right? We don't want to say it, but it's there. Say it. Okay. Honor yourself. Do what you need. Doesn't mean it has to be forever. Maybe you just take this Thanksgiving off, right? Maybe you order in food. Okay. Maybe you order in appetizers and order pickup for Christmas Eve instead of making 27 different things for people to pick over. Doesn't mean it has to stay that way. But while you're transitioning and while you're trying to figure out who you are, during your awakening, it's going to be very important that you just listen and you honor her. Okay. And it doesn't make you a bad person. Definitely not. It doesn't make other people bad either. I think so many times we get caught up on the finger pointing. We want to, good and bad, black and white, this or that. And so much of life is just, it's not that. There's so much gray out there. And so it's okay to just say, that was great for a season, but right now, this is what my body needs. This is what she needs. And, same with relationships, right? So maybe it's not a family structure situation with you. Maybe it's your friend group. Maybe you have found yourself not really wanting to be around your same group of friends that you once loved doing, Friday night this, or Thursday nights we do game night, and you had fun and you loved it, but maybe now it just doesn't sit right with you anymore. Okay. Maybe you just don't want to go out to dinner as much. Maybe you're becoming more of a homebody. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? And that's not necessarily saying that this friend group is bad or there's any kind of negativity attached to that. Maybe it's just your body is just saying, hey, let's spend some more time within us. Okay, let's figure out what is healing for us, because this awakening is about healing. Okay, it's about healing so we can move into our best future self. Now, I had a conversation with both of my boys actually recently about, different situations kind of spurred the conversation. But, I found myself repeating it to them both. And I said, envision your future self, and then you make decisions every day to support that person. And so many times we just get caught up in the repetition and the I have to's or I got to's or this is what I've always done, right? especially women. That's just what we do. So what I would invite you to do is just, not look at it in a situation of where it's negative or, bad. We just want to make sure that we are making decisions every day that support our future self. And it's in the consistency of doing that that aligns us to where we need to be. So if you found yourself, in, workplace environments that just nothing's wrong, nothing's changed, there's been no falling out, there's been no added responsibility, there's been, literally nothing, but it's just not sitting right with you anymore. It just doesn't feel like it's serving you and your future self. If those friendships and those friend groups, they're just not sitting right anymore. They're not, again, nothing happened, no big argument, no big crisis occurred. Just, take a break, listen to yourself, be mindful of who she is and who she needs right now. And she needs you to take that break, right? She needs you to heal. There could be some, full transparency. It can get ugly, right? When we're sitting still and we're listening and we're honoring ourselves, it can get ugly. Some things could pop up to the surface. Maybe some things that you try to bury. Maybe some things that you try to just move past by ignoring. And you come to a point in your perimenopausal journey and these hormone changes and being quiet with yourself, it gets loud, right? I experienced that. So things that, didn't bother me, or I was able to kind of move past. I can't really move past them right now. I have to sit with it and I have to process it. And that's okay. And that's okay. And because I'm healing, healing is a journey, and perimenopause and menopause is a journey. And we have to do what we need to do in supporting our best self, supporting what she needs, talking to ourselves like we would talk to our best girlfriend, uplifting ourselves like we would, a friend who needed, some support. We would never shame our friend, right? We would never, say, no, you just need to push through. I don't care if you're tired. I don't care if you're sad. You just, you don't need to take time for yourself. We would never tell our girlfriend that, right? It would be, take a nap, take a day off, support your mental health, get some rest, go for a walk. Let's meet for coffee, whatever the case is, like we would support that person however they needed us to. And so I invite you to think about yourself as your best friend. Okay. Show up for her like you would your girlfriend, and support that person on that journey. And we give grace, right? We just give so much grace to everyone, except for ourselves sometimes. And we're going to need a lot of grace during this journey of perimenopause, especially when things poke its little head up, things that we didn't want to address. And I just invite you to just be there for her, be there for yourself, because, her healing is going to be what helps you transpire into your best future self. And I've already, I'm not through perimenopause. I'm still smack dab in the middle of it. Fun fact, I am the only female in my family on my dad and my mom's sides that, actually is going through perimenopause naturally. Right. So we can go through, sometimes if you were to have, surgical procedure, you have a hysterectomy, you kind of get surgically thrown into menopause, shortly thereafter. So I don't know how long my perimenopause into menopause journey will be. So I'm doing what I can now to just make sure that that journey, however long it is, that she's ready for it and she's got this, both physically, medically, mentally, internally, externally, however she needs me to show up. I'm here for her because she's already gone through a lot. Her perimenopausal journey, and I'm speaking still about myself, her perimenopausal journey has been an awakening that was unexpected and hasn't been pretty, but it has been necessary and it has been welcoming. I love this version of who Tasha is becoming. I love it for her. I wish I could, go back in time and talk to, that 10-year-old, that 12-year-old, that 14, 15-year-old, and just encourage her to be kinder to herself throughout her 20s and throughout her 30s. Because this side of it, there's so much perspective there. And I hope and I pray that you guys are willing to go through this journey and peel back some layers of healing that needs to happen, from listening that needs to happen, and figuring out during this awakening how you want your future self to be. Who do you want to be? Where do you feel like you would like to be over the next 5, 10, 15 or more years? And I'm going to clap for you every bit of the way. You have a friend here, you have a girlfriend who's cheering you on. I know the value of that because I have those people in my life. So if you don't have that, you do now. And so there's not a whole lot of things that my patients or my friends can come to me and say, hey, I'm experiencing this, where I can't just sit down with you and say, yep, that sounds about right. That tracks. So from the physical symptoms of perimenopause to the emotional changes and just the feelings of anxiety and depression or sadness or, whatever the case may be, those are all, yes, part of perimenopause for so many of us women. But again, I will tell you, it gets better. Ladies, it does. I absolutely am in love with this time of my life. I love the uncovering and the unveiling and that has happened for me. I love the empowerment that I have now that I've never experienced before. And I love that my children get to experience a mom who is truly joyful now, because I'm honoring myself and I'm honoring my future self. And I want that for you, and I want that for your family and your friend group. And so I am excited to continue this journey of Not Your Mama's Midlife. We are going to talk about some good stuff. Okay, so I hope you continue to tune in. I'm excited, and I hope you are too. So until next time, ladies, bye.